Welcome back to another edition of the NFL Injury Report. We're getting into week 8 now. We are almost halfway through the season, just under, and the injuries just continue to pile up. Starting with Nico Collins, Monday night suffered a concussion in that game against Seattle. He did not practice on Wednesday, and he's working off a short week, so I would not expect him to play. Aaron Jones, we talked about him earlier this year, and he was initially put in IR in week 2, dealing with a hamstring injury. He is actually expected to be activated for Thursday this week. By the time this is posted, it will have already happened, but I'm guessing he's going to be activated. So, make sure you comment below on whether I was right or wrong. I'm going to be right. But anyways, it'll be nice to see him get back into the game. He was a limited participant Tuesday and Wednesday. That's why I think he's going to play tonight. But moving on, Lamar Jackson, lots of hush-hush around how serious the injury was. Obviously, he's been out several weeks at this point now, including this past bye week for the Ravens. It looks like he might be able to play. It's still uncertain. His status is still up in the air, but he was a limited participant on Wednesday. The practice report isn't out yet for Thursday, but he would have Thursday and Friday then to get the ability to ramp up some of his participation. He did take some QB1 reps or first team reps with that with the rest of the starters. So hopefully he's on the track to playing this week. Garrett Wilson hyperextended his knee 2 weeks ago. He obviously sat out last week. I would expect him to sit out again this past week. Speaking of the Jets, or continuing that thought, Justin Fields was benched. He'd been a decent fantasy starter for some weeks when he doesn't throw for 45 yards prior to the past week. But it is unclear of what's going to happen with the QB situation. Glenn's keeping it close to his chest. He's saying because he doesn't want to give a competitive advantage. I haven't seen anything competitive about the Jets yet this year, but my guess it's because Tyrod Taylor is day-to-day with a knee. I would assume if Taylor's able to go, he will actually be the starter rather than Fields, but if you plan on starting him this week, make sure you pay attention to that. It may end up being a game-time thing. It may just be until whatever quarterback trots out there with the offense whenever the Jets get the ball, but something to keep an eye on regardless. Stephon Diggs was listed on the injury report with a chest injury again this week. He was limited on Wednesday. He played with this last week. He was limited as well, and then he played, and unless there's a setback that ends up being reported, I don't expect him to miss this upcoming week either. Chris Olave last week was listed with a hip injury. He played, had a pretty good game. Now he's on the injury report with an ankle injury. It's unclear if this is something minor and he's able to play through it and work through it, or if it's something a little bit more major and he's going to end up missing time. He was limited, but it's something to keep an eye on as this is different than what he was on the injury report last week. Puka Nacua is on bye this week, but Sean McVay is hopeful that they will have their star wide receiver back for week 9. I would expect him to be back. It sounds like he's making some pretty good progress. Expect Puka to be back and ready to go to run with his partner in crime, Devontae Adams, who, if you had him last week, had a pretty good day in fantasy. Getting to the Bucs wide receivers, because we always have to talk about them. Amiga Igbuka was limited on Wednesday. His status for the game this upcoming week is uncertain. He obviously did not play last week. Mike Evans, who did return last week, another prediction I was right on, by the way. I should keep a tally of which ones I get right and wrong. Actually, I don't think I want to know that. But anyways, he did play last week and then ultimately left the game early and is now expected to miss most, if not the rest of the regular season with a collarbone fracture. Allegedly, it's a cleaner break. But hopefully that will allow for him to make a little bit faster of a return than what it would typically be if it's a little bit more messier. For example, is an open fracture where it comes through the skin. The Bucs are leaving the door open for him to return in the next 8 to 10 weeks, which would put him right at the end of the season, if not into the playoffs a little bit. So we may be talking about Mike Evans come end of the season as the Bucs get ready for the playoffs there, and when we're talking about fantasy championship time. Brock Purdy is still making progress, according to Kyle Shanahan, but it's unlikely that he's going to play this week, with Shanahan calling it a stretch in a recent interview. So expect Mac Jones to come in and still be running the show. Jaden Daniels, another quarterback, Washington Commanders, is expected to be out this week. Marcus Mariota will start. And honestly, with how Mariota played last week against Dallas, I'd look elsewhere. Another quarterback, man, a lot of quarterbacks. Bryce Young, quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, left the game against the Jets early with a high ankle sprain. He has not practiced for the past 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. And it looks like Andy Dalton, the old Red Rifle, finally going to get a chance again to start in the NFL. So it'll be exciting to see him and relive some of my childhood memories with him throwing to AJ Green. Just this time he's thrown to McMillan. Continuing the thought process with the Commanders, Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are both expected to get back on the practice field this week. It is unclear about them being able to play. McLaurin was limited last week and ultimately did not play. Deebo obviously did not play either, dealing with that heel injury, McLaurin with the quad. So going a little bit deeper into Deebo Samuel's injury, it's technically being listed as a pedal heel bruise. Pedal just means foot, heel being, your heel. And that bruise specifically is on your calcaneus, which is the bone that we commonly call your heel. And this typically occurs by repetitive pounding and force and impact on this part of your foot, usually from something like running or jumping or any type of sporting activity, especially if you're wearing shoes or some type of footwear that is not particularly supportive or able to absorb force as well. So for something like football, where those cleats are designed to give you as much traction as possible while also being lighter so that you're able to not have to move as much weight on your feet, it makes it a little bit more likely that someone would experience this in a sport like this. Now, with that being said, what's actually occurring is that consistent impact ends up bruising and inflaming the soft tissue around your heel, as well as the fat pad on the bottom of your calcaneus, which is responsible for absorbing force. If it's a little bit more severe, then you actually can end up bruising the calcaneus, the bone itself. And that will take a little bit longer to heal. Managing this, it's not something that you have to necessarily shut everything down for. However, rest will tend to help it so that you decrease some of the inflammation and obviously the pain then as well. But it can also be managed by modifying your activity depending on the severity of what it is that you're feeling and possibly toning it down a little bit, as well as then using other recovery and rehabilitative processes such as ice, using NSAIDs to decrease some of that inflammation, foam rolling and stretching some of that soft tissue around your calcaneus that attaches onto it, such as like your Achilles tendon, so then thus your calf, your plantar fascia, some of those deeper plantar foot intrinsic muscles that lie underneath the plantar fascia, things of that nature. Usually this takes around somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks to like fully kind of recover and heal from. But again, it depends on the severity as well as if you're taking time off or trying to modify your activity so that you're able to continue to play. Deebo is most likely and already kind of has started on the path of modifying his activity so that he's able to continue to play, even though it's still going to be painful. And that's what he was doing the first 2 weeks prior to this past Sunday, where he was still playing, but he was still dealing with this injury. And then likely this continued impact and irritation of that fat pad, that calcaneus, that bruise, ultimately led them to say, all right, we're gonna like shut things down, not necessarily shut things down fully, but bring this back a little bit more to allow for this inflammation to go down and ultimately allow him to do more with less pain. Whenever you do shut something down fully though, and you're resting it, you then have to be able to bring the activity back along gradually, right? You can't just immediately jump back to 100%. That's actually how you're going to end up continuing to feel pain and irritating it more. For Deebo, and then if anyone else is dealing with this, you're going to have to slowly, gradually introduce new activity, especially related to impact, because that is going to be the thing that is most irritating for this type of injury. So that's a little bit deeper dive into Deebo Samuel's heel injury, or pedal heel bruise as it's being called. But as always, thanks for watching. Make sure you comment and subscribe so you can continue to follow these. Let me know what you guys think. And if someone wants to keep track of how often I'm right on my predictions or not, that would be awesome. But again, I don't really know if I want to see those numbers. But thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.